Okay, we're on chapter 10. Sorry that I mismarked or mislabeled chapter 9 yesterday. Here we go. All right. The next morning, as we were waiting for the abbot, the messenger announced that we were expected to appear before the Dalai Lama at 2 o'clock that afternoon. Thereupon, we went in search of the abbot and located him as he was leaving the audience chamber. His face was beaming as he held in his hand our commission to enter the country at will. After reading the order which the messenger had brought us, he said, "This is not an order, it is only a request. The audience is called to confer upon you this commission." As we were all together, it was suggested that we go immediately to see the records. We proceeded thence in a group. On our arrival, a great surprise awaited us. There were thousands of clay tablets and records of copper and bronze plates, also beautifully carved tablets on a thin white marble. As this was our first opportunity to contact this class of record, we decided to look them over at once. The abbot told us he was not familiar with the tablets, but he had been told that they were of Persian origin and that he would attempt to find a Lama who was familiar with them. Thereupon he departed and we began to look them over. The characters were not familiar to any of our party. The tablets were made of 2 slabs of pure white marble, out of 1/4 of an inch thick, about 1/4 of an inch thick, put together like veneer with a cement that we could not identify. The edges were beautifully beveled, and around each tablet was a margin of 2 inches with carved raised figures. Many of these figures were of pure gold inlay, while all the titles were of pure gold inlay but not raised. The tablets were carefully numbered by sets and a serial number given to each set. The dates were represented by wreaths of flowers intertwined with vines and leaves. We were to record a date like January 1, 1894. If we were to record a date like January 1st, 1894, the first month of the year would be represented by the stem of a flower, not yet come into, but inlaid with pure jade. The first day of the month would be represented by the stem just coming into bud, inlaid with gold. The 1 of 18 would be represented by the stem with the bud just opened enough to disclose the pistil of the flower. The petals of the flower are lapis lazuli inlay. The pistil being gold inlay with a small diamond set in gold. The 8 is the flower in full bloom, with 8 stamens showing, each stamen an inlay of gold around the pistil, with a smaller diamond set in the gold inlay. The 9 is represented by a rose with 9 petals in full bloom, 1 petal an inlay of lapis lazuli, 1 of jade, and 1 of, I don't know that word, chalcedony. This order repeated 3 times. This shows that the last or the end of the digits was reached. Thus they were used from 0 to 9, then repeated. The 4 is a lily in the process of opening, with the pistil and 3 stamens showing. The bowl of the lily is an inlay of pale jade. The stamens are fire opal, set with 4 small diamonds, and the pistil of the lapis lazuli inlay, set with 4 small diamonds. The space given over to the text is outlined with a thread-like vine inlaid with gold, the leaves being inlays of green jade, and everything being worked out in perfect detail. Every tablet is a perfect jewel in itself. The type of tablet and the method of dating would indicate early Atlantean. Early Atlantean. Each tablet would be worth a king's ransom were they offered for sale. As we were musing, the abbot and priest came up, accompanied by the old lama who had charge of the records. We became so engrossed with his recital of the history that it was necessary for the abbot to call our attention to the fact that the time for our appearance before the Dalai Lama was fast approaching, and that we should be in robes for this. When we arrived at our quarters, we found robes laid out for each of us, but how to put them on was a facer to us. The time was passing so swiftly that we decided to make a bold, quick try and put them on helter-skelter. It developed later on that some of them were inside out and others backside foremost, while a few had the robes on as they should be. On arriving at the audience chamber, we beheld the Dalai Lama crossing the hall with his guard to enter the chamber by the great doors. We were certain we saw a broad smile flit across his face. We composed ourselves at attention to await the opening of the side door, which was our clue to enter the chamber. Soon the door opened and we were ushered in amidst the most gorgeous decorations that it had been our lot to witness. The ceiling of the room terminated in a great dome in the center. In this dome were 3 large openings through which great beams of sunlight flooded, lighting up the room with a brilliance and splendor too magnificent for description. The walls were completely covered with gold thread tapestries interlaced with figures made of silver threads. In the center of the room, on a raised, I don't know what a DAIS is. Let's see what that is. A low platform for a lectern, seats of honor, or a throne. Okay, so let me say DAIS. DAIS is the name. On days covered with a cloth of spun gold, sat the Dalai Lama dressed in a robe of spun gold trimmed with purple and spun silver cloth. We were conducted before the Dalai Lama by the abbot and the high priest, and as before, they stood at either end of the line. After a word of greeting, the Dalai Lama stepped down from the dais and stood before us. He raised his hands, we knelt and received his blessing. As we arose, he stepped to our chief and placing a brooch on his breast, spoke through the interpreter. This will allow you and your associates the freedom of this land. You may come and go at will, and with it I bestow upon you this commission, which entitles you to the rank of a citizen of Tibet. I confer upon you the title of Lord of the Great Gobi. He then walked down the whole line, placed a smaller but similar brooch upon the breast of each one of the company. Were this as a token of my esteem, I will admit you to the whole land of Tibet. It is your password wherever you go. He took the scroll containing the commission from the hand of the abbot and handed it to our chief. The brooches were beautifully made of gold, wrought in filigree with a most lifelike likeness of the Dalai Lama carved in relief on jade, set like a cameo in the center. To us, it was a jewel which we prized very highly. The Dalai Lama and all were graciousness itself. All we could say was thank you. The old Lama, who had charge of the records, was ushered in, and we were informed that we would share the evening meal with the Dalai Lama. After the meal was finished, the conversation drifted to the remarkable tablets. The Dalai Lama, as well as the old Lama, speaking through an interpreter, gave us detailed accounts of the history of the tablets, all of which we carefully noted. It seems that these tablets were discovered by a wandering Buddhist priest in vaults under the ruins of an old temple in Persia. This priest stated that he was led to them by a sweet song he heard emanating from the ruins as he sat in samadhi. The songs were so sweet and the voice so clear that he finally became interested, following in the direction from whence they came, and found himself within the ruined vault. The voice seemed to come from below. After a thorough inspection, he could find no evidence of an opening, so he determined to locate the source of the voice. Securing crude tools, he began digging in the debris and discovering a flagstone that seemed to be only a portion of the floor of the ruined vault. His heart sank in despair as he thought for a time that he had been led from the right path by the whistling through the old ruins. Before leaving the place, he sat in meditation for a few moments, and as he sat thus, the voice became more clear and distinct, ending with the injunction to proceed. With almost superhuman effort, he succeeded in removing the large flagstone. This disclosed an opening leading downward. As soon as he stepped through the opening to the passage, it was lighted up as by an unseen force. Ahead of him gleamed a bright light. He followed the light, which led him to the opening of a large vault, closed by huge stone doors. As he stood for a moment before these doors, the hinges began to creak and the great stone slab swung slowly, revealing an opening through which he passed. As he crossed the threshold, the voice rang out clear and sweet as though the owner occupied the interior. The light that seemed stationary at the door moved to the center of the great vault, lighting in fully. So lighting it fully, there in niches in the walls of this vault, covered with dust and the accumulation of ages, were the tablets. He inspected a few, realizing their beauty and value, then decided to wait until he could communicate with two or three of his trusted associates and confer with them regarding the removal of the tablets to a place of safety. He left the vault, replaced the slab, and covered it over again with the debris, then started on a quest for associates who would believe his story and who had the fortitude and means to carry out his plan. The quest lasted for over 3 years. Nearly all those to whom he related his story thought he had gone stark mad. Finally, one day, while on a pilgrimage, he came across 3 priests whom he had known while on a similar pilgrimage, and he told them the story. At first, they were very skeptical, but one evening at exactly 9, as they were sitting around the campfire, the voice began to sing of these records. The next day, the 4 of them dropped out of the company and started the journey to the ruins. From that time on, at 9 o'clock in the evening, the voice would sing. If they were weary and downcast, the voice would sing all the sweeter. At the journey's end, as they were approaching the ruins an hour before midday, a slight boyish form appeared before them and began singing, leading the way to the ruins. When they arrived, the flagstone was lifted and they went immediately to the vault. As they approached, the door swung open and they entered. A short examination convinced the priests of the value and truth of the discovery. Indeed, so enraptured were they that they did not sleep for 3 days. They made all haste to a village about 70 miles distant to secure camels and supplies which would enable them to move the tablets to a place of greater safety. They finally secured 12 camels, loaded them, and returned. The tablets were packed in such a manner that they would not be injured. Securing 3 or more camels, they started the long journey through Persia and Afghanistan to Peshawar. Near Peshawar, they secreted their burdens in a secluded cave where they remained for 5 years. One of the priests always sat in samadhi before the cave all the time to protect the tablets. From Peshawar, they were removed to Wanda in Punjabi. Here they reposed for 10 years. Then by slow stages, they were brought here and deposited in the palace of the Grand Lama. This took more than 40 years to accomplish. Pretty incredible. From this palace, they were to be taken to Shambhala. In other words, we had found them in transit. At this time, in the narrative, an attendant brought 4 of the tablets into the room and placed them carefully on the raised place that answered as a table around which we sat, so that we faced them. Just as the hands of the clock pointed to the hour of 9, a voice came forth in lilting tones, infinitely sweet, yet of highly pitched, immature, boyish treble. These are the words translated into English as faithfully as we are able to present them. That there is an all-wise, intelligent spirit, that this intelligence is divine and infinite and permeates all things, cannot be contradicted, because this intelligence does permeate all things. It is infinite, and it is the source of all. It is divine, and its divinity brought into thinkable or visible form the fact or truth of all things. You can name this all-wise, intelligent spirit, God, or good, or what you will, as man must have a name for everything. Once he has named a thing, he has power to bring it into existence. If man names anything through true reverence, worship, and praise, he can and does become that which he names. Thus you can see that man by choice can become God or animal. It becomes the ideal which he presents for himself to follow. With this line of thinking, it is simple to see that man is the only begotten son of God, or the only begotten son of the animal. Thus, by choice, man can become evil or devil if his eye beholds evil, or he becomes God if his eye beholds God. In the formless state, the all-wise, intelligent spirit was silent and contemplative. Yet the intelligence was there and saw itself as the producer as well as the spectator of all animate and inanimate things. In this silent state, the all-wise, intelligent spirit saw there was no modification, and resolving to emanate or bring forth the universe, this intelligence formed a picture of what the universe should be. Having not but the perfect picture or divine plan to follow, the universe willingly took the form directed by the intelligence. So the divine ideal picture was expanded until it came into perfect visibility. This is the universe that we see today. This is going on with the perfect plan held forth for it to assume. This intelligence is and always has been the perceiver and director of its perfect divine ideal plan. This intelligence knew that it was necessary to bring forth animate form and endow it with all potentialities through which it could express fully. This is what is known as immortal man, which differentiates itself in all phases and directions, is the immortal of each man today. As this man was created in the divine ideal of all-wise intelligence, spirit, he was set forth as the son of the principle with dominion over every attribute and every condition. Son means union with, not servant of. It was necessary that this son be wholly free to choose and in no way become a slave or a puppet. This immortal ideal must always include a portion or spark of the central fire of that which brought or projected it into existence. This projection was the first cell that finally became man's body, and is the spark of life that always endures and never dies. This cell is, in name, the Christ. This cell, although divided and repeated many millions of times, retains the image of the divine spirit projected and implanted in it, and cannot be perverted by man's thinking. Thus, man is always divine. This cell projects its divinity into every cell created by the multiplication of itself, unless perverted by man's thinking. The collection of these cells finally assumes unto itself a container or cover, which is called the human body. The spirit or essence, still in unmodified form, has the intelligence to see all changes going on around it. By always standing in his high dominion, man is spirit and spirit is God. This higher self must be thought of, pondered over, worshipped, and blessed as being right within man. First, there must be faith that it is there. This brings forth the knowing that it does exist in man, and the blessings and thanks given bring it into visibility. Man is that very thing itself. This is the way to the attainment of all knowledge. The brain at first seems to be the perceiver because it is the aggregation of the more delicate cells. And these cells first accept the vibrations and amplify them so that they may be perceived by man. Then they are selected and sent to all the other organs, and each, if held in divine order, goes to the very organ to which it belongs. Each organ and nerve center is the seat or special amplifying center for centralizing the real man. When they are harmonized and coordinated, man stands forth in all dominion and power. He has brought forth the Holy Ghost, the whole of the all-wise, intelligent spirit in creative action. This is soul and body brought into one focal center. No man ever accomplishes anything unless he consciously or unconsciously brings every faculty to this one center. This is the place of power, the Christ within man, the place where man stands supreme. And how can man suffer discord, inharmony, sin, or sickness unless he idealizes them and brings them into existence? If he stands forth always, at all times, As the all-wise, intelligent spirit and knows no other, he cannot be conscious of anything less. With this highest ideal always held in clear waters of man's intelligent thinking, he becomes God. He is certain to be answered by this inner voice at all times. Back of will stands desire. Will, in its truest state, is a pure colorless force and is moved into action by desire. If there is no color or direction given to will, it is inactive. Place the desire in harmony with the will force, and it will spring into action immediately and call legions to carry out its commands, the only requirement being that the commands are in divine order. There are myriads of worlds. There's but one thought out of which they grew. Its law is order, which cannot swerve. Its creatures are free to choose. Only they can create disorder, which in itself is pain and woe, hate and fear. These they alone can bring forth. The great principle stands forth as golden light. It is not remote. It is right within yourself. Hold yourself within its glow, and you will behold all things clearly. First, with all your being, know one thing, that your own thought, when you stand, is one with that thought which brought forth the worlds. Out of the blackness of disorder and its outpouring of human misery, there must arise the order which is peace. When man learns that he is one with the thought, which is of itself all beauty, all power, and all repose, he will know that his brother cannot rob him of his heart's desire. He will stand in the light and draw unto himself his own. Let pass through your mind, my son, only the image you desire, which is truth. Meditate only upon the true desire of your heart, knowing that it does not wrong any man and is most noble. Now it takes earthly form and is yours. This is the law through which you bring forth your heart's desire. But him who puts forth his hand to draw the lightning to his brother, recall that through his own soul and body will pass the bolt. But him who puts forth his hand to draw the lightning to his brother, recall that through his own soul and body will pass the bolt. Oh, recall, I'm sorry. I'm reading this wrong. Recall that through his own soul and body will pass the bolt. With further research, these tablets may prove to be copies of former records made to preserve the originals. If copies, they must have been made during early Indo-Aryan age. As far as is known, there is nothing like them in existence today. From that source, but the one did they spring. From that source, but the one did they spring. Thus they could be repeated in song and verse many thousands of times. O man, where is your crown? From eternity it passes on. Where is your soul? But from the infinite it grew, forever and forever. Is it but select to you? Here were the 4 tablets set before us, each one worth a king's ransom. Okay, well, I am going to now try to put these 2 videos that we had to make together due to our internet problem. And we'll get this put out. And then we will hit chapter 11 on Monday. All right, have a good one. This intelligence is and always has been the perceiver and director of its perfect divine ideal plan. The intelligence knew that it was necessary to bring forth animate form and endow it with all potentialities through which it could fully express fully. This is what is known as immortal man. The divine ideal, which differentiates itself in all phases and directions, is the immortal of each man today. As this man was created in a divine ideal of all-wise intelligence, spirit, he was set forth